Shinji and Warhammer40k. Chapter 29. The Creeping Rot. Part 2. The website that I usually use to make the title cards are broken, so I had to use something else. That's why it looks a little different. Maybe it'll get fixed. I don't fucking know. Censorship might be to some a vile thing, but in certain amounts and certain situations it was necessary. It helped that the Earth's Cradle was in a remote enough region of the world that only orbital eyes could see it. 2016 had technology both ahead and behind what could be expected of a world where impact never happened. Another of the changes was that there were less eyes in the sky, and all of these were under direct military control. A debacle, such as what had to be happened to seal eastern Russia and Siberia, could never have gone so long and so opaquely to the media mere 16 years previous, even with their comparatively laughable bandwidth and connectivity possibilities. By comparison, too, restricting the knowledge of Ireul's approach was child's play. Gendo was in uncommonly good cheer, even if only Fuyutsuki could recognize it. "What about this do you find so amusing?" the old man asked. "Even if I know that my presence here is to make the decisions that must be made." His slight snort conveyed how they conformed exactly to his long expectations. Cowards all, aching for the approval of others. It was something that plagued even his son, he knew. "It provides odd comfort to know that no decision I can make could possibly make things any worse. Even the most asinine of judgments can only hasten inevitable doom." "You do prefer we'll survive, I trust." Gendo smirked. "You do remember what this is about. Instrumentality is the goal, not all this circus. Curb your enthusiasm, Fuyutsuki-sensei. It's unseemly." The old man rubbed at his forehead. As a mentor on metaphysics, he felt he had a good handle of what was supposed to happen. "It's not murder," he told himself. "A change in perception of reality is not genocide. And that way, nobody ever dies." His fingers pressed upon a nerve. And that way, he couldn't have been a party to Yu's own... No, not suicide. He could have tried harder, talked her out of it. He was directly responsible. He killed Yu. She looked upon him for judgment, and he'd said that yes, you should die. He looked up. The only reason Gendo didn't blame him so was that both men knew just how stubborn she was when she'd made up her mind. Behind her gentle face and keen mind was a will that had no compunction about twisting a whole world towards a single ideal. Instrumentality. Gendo was merely adding his own conditions to what she decreed to be inevitable. The door to the conference room slid open. The others of the Nerve Directorate had arrived. They sat at the chairs once used for long-distance counsel by Seal. The old man had only showed up once, a few days after his release, to give out terse, cryptic semi-threats to maintain the status quo. Gendo's recovering intelligence assets could only say that the old man had packed up and gone away somewhere. It was the most secure room in the entire geofront, at least electronically speaking. Might as well get some use out of it. Gendo Ikari, still Nerve Commander, sat at the head of the table, leaning forward and gloomy. To the first right seat sat Kozo Fuyutsuki, Vice Commander and Director of Internal Operations, with his eyes closed and waiting. Opposite him was Ritsuko Akagi, Chief Scientific Officer and Director of Research and Technological Developments, for a change seemed to be well rested through an angel attack. Beside her was Masato Katsuragi, Colonel and Director of Combat Operations, who growled faintly, her eyes bleary. Opposite her was Kaji Ryuji, UN Attaché, Director of External Operations. He was grinning at Masato and blew her a kiss. "Well, I still think you're lovely, Misa-chan," said Kaji. "You don't have to go through this every time, you know. It's bad to cut yourself off from everything that isn't your job." "Shut up, Kaji. You're worse than a distraction. You're an irritation." Ritsuko just sighed. "Enough with the filthy talk." She activated the far screen. "Can we just get on with this?" "Indeed. What do we know about this angel doctor?" She nodded briefly to Gendo. Strangely, she could look at him now and accept that she was still attracted to him. She'd followed to his bed and recognized it was his way of asking if she was still under his control, and afterwards had managed not to hate herself. In his own strange way, he was terribly lonely. Gendo must have sensed this, her own response, a dash of pity, and had made no demands upon her for some time. "I'm still not good enough for anyone," Ritsuko thought. Not fallen enough to suit him, and she's still too good for me. The scientist sighed. Good thing there's still science. Her words were clipped and precise, and chasing away the mortal concerns in her mind. The angel's bulk filled the screen, and each and every one of their little emotional hurts shriveled in the face of such terrible, indiscriminate power. The angel, codenamed Ireul, is 6 kilometers in diameter. As far as we can tell, it had assimilated the entirety of the Earth's Cradle. The cryo-chambers, manufacturing plants, reactors, personnel and all. The view flicked to the pit left behind. It appears to be travelling at 300 kilometers per hour, accelerating slightly. With that in mind, time to arrival is between 1.5 to 2 weeks. That's good, isn't it? Kaji asked wearily. That should give us enough time to prepare. Ritsuko shook her head. Not really. That assumes the angel will remain the same as we see it now. There's no way to predict how much more powerful it will become after even just a week. Speaking of which, is it the same angel that was attacking us? Gendo asked. The Dead Sea Scrolls didn't say anywhere the angels would attack in unison. Unlike humans, they had no concept of loyalty. Or betrayal either. Very likely. We have no evidence as to whether angels reproduce on their own, but simple logic dictates that an angel would strive to improve itself to accomplish its own goals. This is a massive change, though, Kaji noted. I just can't think it's anything but deliberate. He and Masato shared a heavy glance. The question isn't just how smart the angels are, but how much smarter are they going to get? Well, it would never have worked here. What can we expect out of it, though, Ritsuko? Masato asked next. What's in the Earth's Cradle that the angel would attack it instead of Tokyo 3 anyway? The blonde shrugged. Many things, possibly, but none really come to mind. If a human did it, I'd have to grant it's a strategic masterstroke. The cradle may be smaller and inferior to our geofront, but unlike Tokyo 3, it's totally self-supporting. A diagram of the Earth's Cradle flashed into view. Its 3 fusion reactors have enough fuel for 150 years of operation. Its manufactories can produce practically anything needed to repair and recover a hypothetically hostile surface world. The 30,000 people in cold sleep, the gene banks and the total database. These could be useful for the long term. Then there's the UN short regiment still inside, their troops and their weapons. She scowled. They have production model Trident warborns made with Ava technology. Sounds like we can expect a lot of trouble out of it, said Kaji. Ritsuko slapped her palm down on the table. We may call Tokyo 3 a fortress city, but there is a literal mobile fortress. But it's all unnecessary. The angel has no need for any of those things. She changed the data back to Ireul's previous form. No human reactor is equal to the energy production capabilities it already demonstrated. What's the point of seizing human weapons? Its attacks are already accurate enough and can hit us right out of orbit. This new approach, it makes too much sense. Human sense. And for the first time, we have to consider if there's some other long-range plan outside of what we're seeing. Contemplations of enemy objectives can be indulged in at a later date, Doctor, said Gendo. What can we do for defense? The Asahino Lance Cannon? Masato looked up. Ritsuko, how soon can we get it working? If we fire it now, we'll just break the damn thing, was the reply. The capacitor banks were the first things installed. We have power, but the cannon systems are still a long way away from being completed. Gendo leaned forward, staring at Ritsuko. But can it be fired? He asked. And if so, can it get through? Ritsuko looked away. It's a plasma lance. The AT field makes things so simple, but a true hellball cannon needs a lot more to feed and accelerate particles to near light speed. It was hard enough to create a self-propagating electromagnetic shell to keep it from propagating too quickly. The thing costs us as much as 3 more Evangelions, Doctor. Is it of any use at all? Her voice was small. You want to hit Phobos? We can hit Phobos. Fuyutsuki nodded, in thanks. Then his eyes widened as he remembered the name. Wait. Phobos! That's moon! Of Mars! Well, it's not that hard.
Astronomical locations are slow and predictable. If the Angel had attacked in its previous form just one more time, no AT field could possibly stand up to that blast. This is anti-orbital defense, and it's puny compared to the Grand Cannon being made in Europe.
And even that was a midget compared to the one planned for Canada. Gendo didn't seem relieved. What's the diameter of the beam?
It's variable, but ultimately limited by the size of the bore. Say 15 meters? Too large a beam tends to collimate too quickly.
Gendo pushed up his glasses. He was not happy. And to destroy the Angel, we must strike at its core, which might be anywhere within a sphere 6 kilometers across. And as you said, there's only one shot.
Perhaps two, but it won't be as powerful as the first. A third try will definitely break the lance cannon beyond hope of repair.
This is unacceptable, Gendo said flatly. No one disagreed. Misato just sighed. She leaned on her elbows and put her palms over her eyes. The nerves behind them just burned from fatigue. She let out a groan.
It's pointless to try and hit it from extreme range.
Oh? Do you have an idea, Katsuragi?
I don't like it,
she said. Full authority as the director meant she could just ignore Gendo when it comes to combat deployment. However, it also meant the responsibility was totally hers when the pilots were being sent out to die. Too much attachment was a military risk, for good reason. She just couldn't let it go like that, however. It felt right. She had to bear the pain for her own decisions. Everyone stared, waiting for her to continue.
Fine,
she spat.
The Earths Cradle. It's big enough. Big enough for all those fake tridents. It's certainly big enough for an Ava.
Kozo Futsuki leaned back and exhaled. You certainly dare to gamble it all, don't you, Miss Katsuragi? Those few simple words she said brought a whole vista of terrifying violence to his mind. It's unorthodox, I'll grant you that.
Are you insane?
Ritsuko crowed.
You're going to ask me to figure out a way to put Evangelions into a boarding action of an angel?
Misato merely turned to look, her eyes bleak and unblinking.
Now I know where the boy pricked up his predilection for crazy stunts, the scientist mumbled. Ugh, I know Oscar would be jumping for joy at the chance. I don't like it,
Misato said again.
If there was any way...
The walls around them beeped. Gendo pushed a button for the intercom. What is it? He asked.
Sir! Status report!
Makoto's voice filtered through, his tone hitched up with panic.
Katsuragi-san! The blue pass alert level's just dropped! It's gone! Gone? What's gone?
She asked archly.
The Angel! It's disappeared! One moment it's moving along the predicted path to the Indian Ocean, then it just vanished! There's nothing all over the sensor web! There wasn't any hint it was going to do that!
Shit! Misato choked as she tried to bring her sudden surge of emotions under control.
Did you check thoroughly? Is it baffling the sensors?
No, ma'am. Even optical imaging isn't getting anything. There were a few ships following it. They confirmed it vanishing right out of the sky. We're still scanning it with everything we can throw at the area. But it's looking like it's just not there anymore. She stood up.
I'm on my way. Keep monitoring.
Hey! The link switched off. Gendo squinted slightly. This complicates things.
How can something that huge just disappear?
Misato screamed out.
No, much more important. Where is it now?
She turned towards Ritsuko, whose gaze was just as filled with fear.
Technically, there isn't anything in our understanding of quantum mechanics that prohibits teleportation. It's just a nothing in microscale ever been observed to accomplish it. So you're saying it could just drop out of the sky at any moment? No, I'm saying I don't know. The angels have become totally unpredictable. That's what happens when we draw them into an arms race.
A look of shocked realization flashed across her features.
We did, didn't we? That's why the attacks over the past month were like probing skirmishes.
Misato punched down at the metal wall.
Damn it! It's diabolical! What else did it figure out while scanning Tokyo 3?
Katsuragi, step back, Gendo said with a cutting tone. Don't assume too much in the angel's favor either. It's almost as bad as underestimating the enemy. We have no real proof of the enemy's intelligence, merely its intentions. Masato calmed down slightly and giving a bewildered look at Gendo. At times of crisis, someone that could keep his calm and maintain perspective was invaluable. It still felt strange to need Gendo.
We need to evacuate the city,
she said. Gendo sniffed. Out of the question. Masato's antipathy returned.
This is no time to be worrying about moral or logistical difficulty. The angel can appear at any time. We need to be at full readiness and be able to fight without worrying about any civilians getting hurt.
The civilians are safest where they are now, Gendo replied, taking his usual pose. The authority for abandoning Tokyo Free is mine alone, Katsuragi. And further, no other shelters around Tokyo Free are as secure as what was put in here at great cost. If we fail to stop the angel, they will die anyway. Masato leaned one hand on the table and yelled out,
What? Have you seen how big that thing is? It doesn't need any more weapons. It doesn't matter if it lands on us softly or hits the ground hard. That thing in itself can end this city.
Precisely. If, as you say, the angel can appear at any time, an attack while in the midst of evacuation can only be disastrous. Have you considered that it is the best time for it to attack? Masato grit her teeth. They could all play the what-if game indefinitely. Nor are you to release this information to the public, Gendo added. If the angel does not appear within 5 hours, as per regulations, you must stand down from battle conditions.
You can't!
I can, Katsuragi. Needless panic helps no one, especially among the leaders supposed to keep their wits about them. Gendo smirked slightly. Or are you finding the taste of fascistic absolute control too sweet to give up?
You sanctimonious
Katsuragi! Both Kaji and Fuyutsuki spoke up. That's enough, the old man said. We have our own different duties. Just do what you can. We'll work out what to do in a worst-case scenario. She glanced at each of her council of peers in turn, then nodded. There was much she still itched to learn up at the tactical level. If the enemy does arrive, it was best she was on hand to make the call. She all but ran back up to the command center. A few moments after she left, Gendo turned to Kaji and asked, How many warheads do you people have pointed at Tokyo Free, in case Katsuragi's reckless improvisations fail? The spy's expression was impassive. Into or dirty bombs? Both. All of them, Kaji said tonelessly, enough to wipe the island nation from all history. Gendo nodded briefly. Good. General Jonathan L. Stockman felt that he had lived a long enough, good enough life. He was 58 and had fought for the peace of the British Isles against, in his own words, crackheads, Earths, and the French, as tradition demands. His accent jumped all over the place, making it unclear where in the UK he actually came from, perhaps deliberately so, or the relic of early years spent in crude comedy. He was an equal opportunity head kicker. He had laid-back approach to soldiering. It's a good enough trade. And it helped him get through the horrors of impact with only minimal mental scarring. He could see it happening before his eyes. The spray of salty water, all those people despondently pulling their pitiful belongings out of boats, and he stood away waiting for the tanks to arrive. He remembered feeling so cold, far more than just the chill of early morning sea air. The politicians had to negotiate for land their people could live on. They knew that if they messed it up, their own soldiers would kill them. He walked up to the nearest French tank, making sure his hands were away from his rifle. He held a pack of cigarettes on his right hand. There had already been several violent skirmishes, and a few British soldiers on hand had no real anti-tank weapons. There were several thousand civilians offloading, tired, cold, hungry. The sight of guns and armour only made them angry. "We're gonna go back, mind you," he in barely passable French said to the nearest officer, there on top of the tank with its 120mm gun pointed at the huddling mass of civilians. "No more fuel for the boats, not nearly enough food as it is. We need this land, ready to die on it one way or another." His eyes told the truth of it. He and his people had nothing left to lose. They were ready to die, and if they must go, then they would burn most of France on their way to hell. Fortunately, the politicians had managed to come to an agreement that pleased no one. After having helped to convince the French to let them settle across the Channel, he joined up with the UN forces to bring reason back into the world. Most of them were motivated by the preferential treatment given to soldiers and their families in allocating land. For all his trouble, he had a small farm somewhere, and a grandson to keep it in the family. It was good enough. He remained with his trade, for lack of anything else to occupy his time. Glorified guard duty was the brass's recognition for his long service, and a desire to actually slow down. From the wetlands to the deserts, from crumbled cities to mountain hideaways, he felt he had faced it all. He had hurt in all the ways there was to hurt. The buzzing at the back of the neck was similar to many other instances where he was knocked out unawares. His memory was still fuzzy. At such a time, all those other instances melted into one. Awareness returned slowly. It brought screams of the undying. He dropped to the floor. His hands felt cold, bare metal, coated thinly with a film of slightly sticky moisture. From all around there was a faintly sweet smell of rot and rust. He did not need to open his eyes to know under his fingernails was blood, not quite dried. The last thing he remembered was this flood of worm-like creatures flowing over his head. His skin still prickled from the memory. He steeled himself for the necessity of opening his eyes.
"Oh, you're finally awake, General," Kaworu said cheerfully. "Please, join us. Have a seat."
The hybrid gestured for a free chair nearby.
"Would you like some tea?"
General Stockman got up and stared. It was one of the many meeting rooms in the Cradle, and its unpainted walls and stamped metal floor had a faint pinkish tinge. On the table was indeed a large aromatic pot with cups around it. Kaworu took a sip out of the one he was holding. With him were Dr. Leder, Martin Bettelheim, and Sarah Campbell. Each was staring back, and as if on cue took up their own steaming cups. How normal the scene was especially disturbing. A vase with flowers at the centre of the table emphasised how unnatural it all was. The far-off rails and other ghastly sounds remained. He heard a slurping sound from behind and turned around. A pod of veiny organic material was melting back into the wall, until there was nothing but smooth metal to believe it was ever there. He looked down at himself, still clad in his uniform, still clean, if a bit wrinkled. His heart skipped a beat, in realising he had no idea how much time had passed or what was done to him. Kaworu coughed, drawing attention.
"Please, sir, sit. I'm sure you have many questions."
The General decided to oblige. He kept careful notice of the others present, not on Kaworu, who was at least consistently creepy. Their eyes were clear, and giving back similarly suspicious looks. Dr. Leder seemed as peevish as ever, Martin feigning blithe boredom, and the girl, well, Sarah had never been much trouble. He sat down, and Kaworu took his place at the head of the table. The General took one last look around, and frowned. "You're one of them, aren't you?" he asked curtly. Kaworu kept his smile.
"Technically, but as intended by my creators, themselves nothing more than men."
Even in a pose of relaxation, he seemed to exude this intense energy, that simmering threat of unmatched violence.
"I am not your enemy, General."
Once again, it was much easier to accept promises of good intentions beside the threat of harm. He wouldn't have called it bullying, merely pressing the advantage. Many men work so hard, kill, cheat, and steal, just to achieve that unconscious awe of power that can make others wither with a look. General Stockman felt he'd faced up to all sorts of psychos and would-be tough guys. None really frightened him so. Kaworu managed to do that with a smile that would always be the same whether he was serving cake or tearing someone's head off. It was like he would be doing a service either way. The soldier looked around. "The angel."
"Nothing ruins quite like greed, doesn't it?" Kaworu mused. "One moment you're at the top, then nothing. All that work, all that power, wasted for that little extra that was never necessary."
"The angels exist within their uncertain space. The AT field is merely an extension of this. Controlling the absolute territory is a subjective function, not something which can be replicated mechanically," the scientist answered for him, and admitting that human technology could never match it severely galled Dr. Leder. To take control of the Earth's Cradle, the Angel expanded its structure into a nanomachine colony. It's the only way to quickly consume and convert material assets into one massive structure. Kaworu grinned.
But you see, it made a mistake. Perfection is not for it to claim. All power comes from sacrifice, and here, extending its awareness so far, necessary to hold this place together and keep it aloft, why, it has become the cradle. It has to be aware of so many things that ultimately it knows nothing.
He looked up and made a deprecating gesture.
What a big baby, so eager to please. Angels are really such monumentals, you know. Separate them from that. Well, they also have this instinct to obey. Cells all itching for purpose.
And with Adam's soul within him, it was so very easy. Are you saying you're in charge now? General Stockman felt his pistol still on its holster. Why? Was it just ego? What are you up to, Nagisa? What kind of game are you playing at? Kaworu put down his cup and looked coy.
Why, the great game, of course. A mobile fortress is ever so much more useful than a little hole in the ground.
The walls flickered, as pigment sacs similar to those found in squid and octopi served a function similar to pixel screens.
You're not opposed to the idea of using the tools of the enemy, are you, General?
You're not going to get away with this, angel scum! Martin shouted, finally having had enough. He lunged up out of his seat, then stopped. Just a very slight pull by Sarah on his sleeve was enough.
No,
she whispered, shaking her head. He sat back down. Kaworu chuckled.
Now, if everyone were just as logical as her, things would be a lot simpler. Yes, I'll admit to having angel DNA within me, but then that was how I was made. A weapon, a tool, using fire to fight fire.
He gestured around.
Man's will. This is not so different.
The general was unsoothed. This was planned then?
Kaworu nodded. You surely know there are other human organizations with similar aims as Nerve, but with different preferences in how those goals were accomplished. This place is proof enough of that, and right now, a logical extension of its purpose.
What about the rest? I can hear it. I'm sure people died to make this happen. General Stockman snarled out. What are you doing? What's happening out there?
Well, I'm sure it's all for the greater good. You people do set great stock on willful self-sacrifice, don't you? Well, the chance arrived. Don't disrespect their heroism, even if they didn't get to realize it.
He rapped his knuckles on the table, like an auctioneer.
But enough about that. I'm here to make you an offer you can't refuse.
This charade is ridiculous. You hold the cards, it's pointless, Dr. Lader muttered under his breath.
Oh, but you must hear it anyway, Kaworu said gently. You want to save the world and humanity, don't you? Well, you can still have it. You can have power and knowledge beyond your wildest dreams. Be hailed as saviors, as gods among mortals.
Martin sneered. And I suppose we have to bow down to you.
Kaworu blinked. That's not necessary. I do need your cooperation, though. What must me sacrifice? Sarah asked quietly.
Kaworu grinned again.
Very good, Campbell-san. Yes, if you want power, then it has to come with its price. It's a simple thing, really. I don't want slaves or servants. I need reliable peers to carry out the greater good for all concerned.
He first turned to Dr. Vord Lader.
I've seen into your mind, Doctor. How you hate your addled parents. How your brilliance is to distance yourself ever from their broken legacy. You live in suffering of having fools around you, those unable to look beyond a simple and fairly tasteless pun. You kept it anyway, because people should be able to look beyond it. Someday, you hope to become great enough to completely overshadow an archetypical character that never really existed. I can give you that. He then considered Martin Bettelheim. You want to be superior. Easily done. More powerful, more skilled, absolutely above the bar set by Asuka Langley Soyu. Your machine to beat hers, your fame to eclipse the sun. It's yours.
To Sarah Campbell, he said,
The power to decide your own destiny, to become strong and inviolate in your own intentions, needing no one, serving no one, a rock upon the shore of eternity. You shall have it.
Kaworu leaned forward and squinted at General Stockman.
Frankly, I'm surprised, sir. Why aren't you at Tokyo Free? Everyone here has something to prove, and a reason to work against nerve. But what do you want?
Loyalty's not bought by, the old soldier said flatly. If you need morph that bad, then I'm sure you're not sure you're up to much good. This whole thing stinks. You're not getting anything from me.
Kaworu sighed. Oh, but it is for a very good cause. The preservation of humanity. No matter what, there would be survivors. Using the power of the angels and the best of man's technology. Really, what else do we need?
Assuming for the moment that you're not only capable of granting those favours, but can actually be trusted to, this still leaves the question of what you want in return. You need us to take fullest use of the Earth's Cradle, even infested as it is. How do you plan to protect us from being infested in turn? And what is it you want us to do? Said Dr. Lader. Beside him, Martin was quivering with smothered anger. At the same time, however, it was not so unbearable. Kaworu was not merely confident in his position of superiority. His cheery disregard was rubbing the Trident Rawborn's pilot into it. Martin was being treated the way he would act if he held power, and so understood well that the alternative was to be cowed into submission. Kaworu looked thoughtful, and the merciless nature of his leverage was easy to see. The universe is an inherently hostile place. Only fools speak of fairness as if it actually exists as a value. This world, which seems so hospitable to life, has actually faced several mass extinctions. Ultimately, man does not matter. Man can only destroy himself, and with just a few thousand years of silence, all signs of his civilization would vanish. The world is resilient, and there will always be new forms of life to replace the old. Stagnation is death. All those species that died off were the victims of their own lack of ability to adapt. Intelligence is the adaptation that proved most useful to survival. But it's more than just hubris to believe perfection had already arrived. For the power of reasoning, mankind makes do with a frail and fallible body. When the flesh is weak, the spirit falters, the mind loses its might. No, perfection is not here. The angels aren't perfect either. Too large, too alone, each so specialized, and a dead end for evolution. As much as Homo habilis gave way to Homo sapiens, then so must eventually the human form change to the Homo superior. And here is the power of intelligence, that the mind can choose to do this, instead of relying upon the mindless factors of random chance. For humanity to survive in an uncaring universe populated by monsters, it must become better than it is, stronger, smarter, and willing to go one step beyond. He moved his empty hands over another in a flowing, furtive manner. Like sleight of hand, a greyish stick was suddenly in his right palm. I have angel DNA in me, and like a mule, my line ends with me. However, it is possible to transmit adaptations to the next generation, and even selectively present abilities as a multiplier only to those worthy. The stick wriggled. Its tip opened up to reveal rows of barbed teeth. It hissed. There are so many things I could call it, but let me settle for mind worm. It burrows and settles at the back of your neck, sinking and linking itself to your lower cortex. It has no mind of its own, but once it has a hold of your hindbrain, it will take over the functions of an instinct. It would then dissolve into and eventually replace your spinal column. You know, this entire cradle has become one giant angel nanocolony. This is similar. New nerves will grow, chemicals will be released to improve metabolism, DNA sequences will be optimized, and you will find, along with increased physical and mental aptitude, a slight tendency to telepathic and telekinetic talents. Kaworu grinned as the mind worm slid and looped around his fingers. Symbiosis is one of the best adaptations there is, making humanity tougher, overall should make it more difficult to extinct them, no? General Stockman stood up abruptly. You're insane. No bloody way am I going to put that monster in my head. Come on, can't you see he's talking crazy? He's being used by the angel.
It is a delusion to think the genetic code is sacred or taboo. It is foolishness to think that man cannot be bred the same way they did dogs or horses. Man is an animal, and to become more, must decide to accept and change that nature.
Kaworu made kissing noises at the thing.
If, for example, the Holy Grail is filled with swamp water, will mere disgust remove its power to grant eternal life?
Well, how'd you like it poking around your own head? Martin retorted.
Ah, silly angel. It tried, but my flesh is already suffused with angel genes, a stronger set of instructions. Now, sorry to say, it doesn't work on me.
His grin was full and unashamed. He snapped his fingers. The odd carpeting on the ceiling fluffed up, confirming their nature as a bed of presentient larval mass. The mind worm sang. Whoomp! The animal portion of the human mind knew terror well. Kaworu wondered about chaos theory. The simplest organisms were the most robust, even as increasing levels of specialization and organic complexity were supposed to aid with survival. Kaworu liked order, and seeing their faces slack in bliss proved to him that mankind's delight in their intelligence was just so much self-love. Their brains were just complex enough to run into certain fractal traps.
Really, it's just so easy, he thought. Too many emotions, too many junctures to tap. It should have been so obvious, knowing that humans enjoy having their senses all muddled up, from the adrenaline rush of accomplishment to the varying degrees of poison, alcoholic to pure neuron slayers.
He felt a little envy. The little mind worm looped around his wrists and seemed to look up at him plaintively. Kaworu shook his head.
No, little thing, I can't be part of your unity. My own sense of identity would kill you.
That was what happened to Ireul, foolish enough to think he could overwhelm and take control of him too. None of it happened in any real definition, but the conflict between a massive but diffuse consciousness and a limited but extremely focused one was short, brutal, and final. Dumb beasts. What the humans with him were feeling was to be greater than their fleshy bits. It was almost a religious experience. Jonathan Stockman thought he could go mad, but oh, if this was madness, all the world could keep its constricting sanity. He thought he had faced it all the human fears, pains and loss, and all its charms, in love and laughter and wonder. All through that he had to learn to live with the fact that he, as a human, was easily hurt and would have to die. And now to be, not an angel, not a human, but a strange being made of alien flesh, human minds and machine might. How powerful he felt, how huge and indestructible. The average human stood at around 2 meters tall. To be 6 full kilometers from top to bottom. Magnificent. Pure glory. His existence was small, but assuredly recognized and added to the whole. Where are the human doubts, the perennial angst over existence? Where is God? Here are the answers. We are, the unity of purpose said. Why are we here? To become all that we could possibly be. Who do we serve? No man, no angel, no selfish ruler with his own agenda, no ignorant engine of power.
Why? We are. Why? Our truth. Why? The greater good. Why us? Why not?
He had to cry. It was so pure, so vast, a human could get lost in it and yet be secure in the knowledge it was for a purpose. So many who lived such lives of quiet desperation, longing for surety in an uncaring universe.
You are human. It does not matter. All are welcome in the greater good.
Angel and human could be at peace. No more senseless death, no wasteful destruction. Why not share this with the others? It was too good to keep for themselves. They must not be selfish. The greater good was for all. And a small part of his brain screamed and screamed, slowly losing its voice. He held on to that lingering sliver of protest. The old soldier drew his pistol in one smooth motion, felt the reassuring rate of a loaded gun, and pulled back the trigger for the automatic fire. He wailed inside as it gave up nothing more than a series of futile clicks. "Why?" Kaworu asked, puzzled. "It would solve so many problems. Do be rational. It's not as if anything you could do here can change that."
"Can't. This is horrible. I can feel it. It feels so good. So easy to forget you're a monster behind that skin."
"Oh, please. Monster's a matter of definition. The problem with the angels is that they are incapable of truly uniting, using their tremendous potential to full benefit. We can give them direction. We share with us their immortality. Symbiosis is a beautiful thing. Society is just an expression of one of the most successful paths of evolution." General Stockman grimaced.
No. No!
He could feel his will to resist melting away. The others were looking at him with such blatant pity.
"It's bad enough to live as slaves. I can see it. It could work. I can't let you steal freedom from the universe."
Kaworu scoffed. "Typical, limited, human conceit. Free will is no more than an illusion." He smiled thinly. "What is a man? A miserable little pile of secrets. Secrets I have unravelled, levers I have discovered. Think, sir, think. Look beyond your prejudice. No more pain, no more doubts, no more days watching your own body slowly rot away."
"I won't give up my soul to you," he shouted back. "Kill me, I won't serve you. You can't steal my soul."
"Oh, yes, you will. The greater good will prevail." General Stockman heard a shriek and looked up just in time to see the mindworm thrown at his head. It slapped on his forehead and slid, fast, over and around to his neck, too fast for his hands. He screamed as its teeth sank into the back of his neck, and like hot butter his flesh offered no resistance. The others watched horrified as he trashed around, blood spurting out of his mouth and nostrils, until finally he just collapsed face up, his expression only of stupefied glee. "Well, I suppose until it dissolves into your spinal column, there is the threat it will eat your brains from the inside." Kaworu's cheerful expression hadn't changed an iota. "It looks like I needed you most as a demonstration." Then the general's corpse stood up and faced Kaworu. It managed a slow, jerky salute. Its eyes were uncomprehending. "Gun," said Kaworu. "Can you say gun?" "Well, I suppose that's good enough for now. Waste is the enemy of the greater good." He picked up his cup again and took a sip. "See? We're not barbarians here. To all we extend mercy. To all we allow the chance to become part of the jeweled purpose."
"No,"
Martin whispered, looking numb.
You can't expect us to just accept it that easily."
He wanted to shout, attack, run, anything, but the fear paralysed him. Kaworu sniffed contemptuously. "Even the finest logistical situation can be destroyed by mismanagement. That's why I need you. Really now, do you think I'd just say all this and let your state of ignorance and unfortunate prejudice deny you from the greater good?" He gestured around. "I did say the worm grants slight telepathic abilities, didn't I? What you're most afraid of has already happened. Do you feel yourselves the worst off for it?" Sarah looked up sharply. For the first time, fear touched her face. She wouldn't be a slave again. "There are no slaves for the greater good. The entire system is devoted, after all, to letting each and every individual develop to their fullest capability. I'm sure once you come into the full awareness of what you've become, you'll thank me with all your heart." Kaworu knew that as inevitable fact. "You will find the rewards for honest serving most generous indeed." And then they opened their eyes. It was dark, it was wet, and it stank. They blinked, and their pupils became cat-like, piercing the gloom. Kaworu was waiting, his grin the same, and all around him were the horrible, shambling remains of those who had rejected his offer. General Stockman stood up, his expression dead. A large slug-like thing was gorging away, poking slightly out the back of his skull. Those who saw him knew, in an instant from the shared consciousness, nothing so crude as the pathetic delusion the puny normal humans called a collective consciousness. The knowledge was theirs, all knew the why and the how they added to the purpose. Education and doctrine without all those wasteful years of studying and social pressures. They envied his true immortality. Charisma was one thing, loyalty was another, but there is nothing like the comfort in knowing absolute control to smooth over strategic planning. Reputation? Wealth? Politics? Ha! Behold true power. Welcome to the world you will build, said Kaworu. Power redefines the norm. The powerful decide who are recognized as humans. We're all in the same boat now. Let's all just get along, shall we? There's lots to be done. He went off humming. It's a small world after all. The cheery tune seemed to echo through countless corridors. Their veins burned with certainty. They understood, and how much others would never be able to look upon their ingrained beliefs and modern superstitions. Those who lived outside of balance, making war upon their own kind for a variety of foolish reasons, and would rather destroy their own world than simply stop being so stupid and reach for the stars. But they, the best of the old, the power of the new. Yes, feeling its touch of unfolding truth. They really could make so many things better. Ireul attacked at around 11 p.m, July 5th, Tokyo time. Then, after disturbing their sleep, jumped back 7 hours to attack Kenya. The core was stripped from its hollow casing and inside the cradle within an hour. No sense in letting a valuable specimen lie exposed to the elements. By lunchtime at Tokyo 3, the core was set for the experiment. Unlike Nerve, which had research as a secondary objective, the scientists of the Earths Cradle, spurred on by Dr. Lader's near tyrannical rule, worked quickly and without hesitation. Their fear was that Nerve did have jurisdiction over angel materials, and they hurried to learn as much as they could before the UN could demand they give it up to a Kaji. By 1 p.m, July 6th, 2016, Tokyo 3 time, Ireul was reborn and airborne. Interfacing with the Cradle's computers was child's play compared to the massive nanomachine infestation it had to do. Unfortunately for it, as Kaworu proved, doing that necessarily forced itself to become more than just stupid, but highly suggestible. Its myriad facets worked to a purpose that each cell didn't need to understand, merely that it must obey its programmed function. It vanished shortly after. Everyone who knew this prepared for the eventuality of an attack in their own special way. Gendo's decision not to spread unnecessary panic had some logical basis, Yang had to admit. Tokyo 3 is as adequately protected as can be done, he explained to the base commander. The 4 cannon roosts at the cardinal directions, our own short-range missile stocks, then the lake gun. The local JSSDF officer looked pained. When would Yang realise his little puns were never going to catch on? There's not much we can alter that, is there? Yang nodded. My apologies, Colonel, but I do have something to request. I mean no usurpation of your authority over this base and its personnel. No, I'd appreciate any advice you have to give, Yang-sensei. As far-reach echelon observers went, Yang proved to be rather low maintenance. When not supplementing his UN stipend with teaching, he spent his days sipping expensive and exotic teas while reading, occasionally going off base to buy more tea or more books. The rest of it worked in all its military-industrial glory without distractions or interference. With his accentless speech and self-effacing attitude, people quickly forgot that he was actually Chinese, and that an army 15 million strong was ready to sail across the gap to avenge any insult. Please deploy all ground defense forces outside and surrounding Tokyo 3, ready to swoop into the city. I also want to borrow Kirishima's Guardians. Since she's here in standby with Magno's Tancred, she has no need of them. Could you give them angel hunting gear? He looked up from his cup. Bolt rifles, combat armor, all that. In his base had Colonel Takato Nasuno in command. He knew that his posting was more for political reliability than any battlefield expertise. General Asagiri, who of the JSSDF commander Troika pushed most for in his support, gave over authority with instructions not to rock the boat. Colonel Nasuno leaned forward and steepled his fingers onto his nose, a posture hardly patented by Gendo Akari. Now had requested we follow their lead in keeping things as normal. Why should I make people more nervous by bringing out the troops and make it more likely they'd panic? Momentum, Yang said simply. To his credit, the colonel understood instantly. In war, it's important to press the advantage, but what makes you think the angels could understand and apply even something that basic? Do you know what happened in Russia? Why, no, was the puzzled reply. What was it about? Total blackout of the Eastern Territories, and the Chinese People's Army mobilized north as if they would pour en masse into the border. If anyone should know why, then why not the new father of their nation? No, not even I know, Yang replied. I do have a bad feeling about this. I agree with Nerve that trying to evacuate now would serve no purpose. There isn't a place as hardened for attack as Tokyo Free. Still, he sighed loudly, I'm reminded that no matter how frightening the angels may behave, it is much easier for the small to mirror the great than the great to mirror the small. Misato paced around her office. It was near sunset. Be practical, Gendo, of all people, had to tell her. She'd ordered people into the shelters just the night before, and kept them cooped up there for several hours until the all clear. She couldn't shove citizens back in on the off chance the angel may appear.
After all, if the enemy may appear at any moment, then the only way for you to be sure the people won't get caught in the crossfire is to keep them cooped up for days, Ritsuko had advised, and took a drag on a cigarette. Impossible, Masato. That's torture. And the shelters have only enough supplies to last for 3 days in any case, and air for 20 hours. Even keeping everyone here at high alert will snap nerves sooner or later.
Misato sank back to her sofa. She hugged one of the large pillows.
Responsibility sucks, she yelled out. You know they're having a little festival out there again? I can't keep the pilots here on standby, or the people get the idea something's gone horribly wrong. Again! It'd be cruel to ruin what little life pleasures they have left. Again.
Misato turned aside to face Ritsuko.
After what happened the last time, you'd think they'd learn we're bad luck when it comes to holidays. Something always screws up. Is it worth the risk? People need constant reassurance. It's part of what makes us human, Ritsuko sighed. How we want things to be the same while every day changing enough that we don't die of boredom.
She tapped at an ashtray.
Besides, if the patterns hold, the angel has never attacked us twice in close succession. The angel never turned into a massive freaking engine of destruction before either. Why should we trust it to behave? It's the enemy, damn it! We have no choice. We also have an instinctive liking for patterns. It's all a gamble, Masato. Worrying about what's outside your control is the best road to insanity.
Ritsuko put away her cigarette.
It's not the responsibility that's annoying you now. Stop worrying about the kids. Papa Kaji's out there taking them to the fair.
Misato stared back flatly, looking faintly afraid.
It's also a human trait to be afraid of happiness after unforeseen change, in the face of comfortable misery,
Ritsuko added next, and that comment cut both ways. Meanwhile, Kaji rested upon a park bench, unreasonably weary. Amazingly, Asuka had finally decided to disentangle herself from his arm and had gone off somewhere with her friends. He massaged his left arm, trying to get the blood flowing. He sighed in relief and leaned back. He watched all the people go by, especially the young women in their charming kimonos. He heard a small giggle pass his lips.
Interesting, isn't it? Sometimes the suggestion of what you can't have is more satisfying than what's brazenly available,
he heard a soft voice say from his left. He turned to see a teenage girl in a light grey kimono, patterned with petals in white that gave it a shimmering silver effect. It matched her likewise pale hair, 2 long locks framing her face. In contrast to the otherwise monochromatic tone of her clothes, her eyeshadow was an alluring light blue, and her lips were shockingly red.
May I sit here?
She asked, pointing with a perfectly graceful gesture.
Whoa, who would be cosplaying a Yukahime in the middle of summer?
Kaji thought, with most of his brain feeling electrified by the sheer subdued allure she was exuding.
Please, don't mind me,
he replied, his limbs twisting into his customary rakish grin.
Most kind of you,
she said, and carefully sat down. A few moments passed in silence. Kaji inched closer.
So, are you here by yourself?
He asked.
No, I have 2 companions. They won't be a bother, though.
I see.
Kaji flicked at his own hair and smiled wide. His voice took on a throaty purr.
In that case, could you be so gracious as to allow me to stand by as your guard and guide in this little fair?
My, how forward,
she said back, her voice barely above a whisper.
I like that. You haven't changed much. Have you, Mr. Ryuji?
Kaji blinked.
Have we met before?
She giggled, elegantly.
You really don't recognize me, do you?
He peered closer. She was beautiful in that sculpted, untouchable way. Her body was tight and shaped well by the kimono. Her eyes were amused and slightly red. She seemed otherworldly, so perfect, almost vampirical. Now where had he seen that shade of red eyes before? His left arm, about to reach over her shoulder, snapped back. He recoiled, making warding gestures with his fingers.
Nagisa!
His voice was almost a shriek. He, coyly put his palms together in a prayerful gesture. His kissably red lips twitched up. Guilty as charged. Kaji shivered in dread at the lusty pitch of that tone.
Why are you dressed like that? What the hell are you doing here?
Padding. Kaworu answered the question Kaji really wanted to ask, poking at his own breasts through the kimono. And I'm not a stupid, Mr. Ryuji. I know there is a shoot-to-kill order out on me. The only way I could get into Tokyo free was to sneak in.
You little...
Kaworu held up a dainty hand. Do remember, we are in public. All I have to do is shriek, "Rapist!" Even if you could eventually pull on your connections, the confusion would serve my purposes too. The spy growled but sat back down. His hand still twitched, itching to strangling the unwelcome hybrid.
What do you want?
He hissed. I would like to talk to Miss Soyu, please. Do remove her watchers, and then yourself, will you?
You're crazy. No way in hell am I going to let you get your hands on Asuka.
Kaworu sighed. I give you my word, she will not be harmed or tampered with. I only want to talk. Kaji snorted scornfully.
Dry up and die.
Kaworu sighed again. All right, if that's how you wish to play it. He looked around the small plaza. Such a happy little event, don't you think? Short moments that seem to last forever. Ah, hello, little girl with the yellow kimono. He ever so gracefully gestured closer. Please, come here. The child made an ooh sound and slowly moved closer. Her hair was tied into 4 little pigtails. Awesome, she yelled. Are you a princess? Kaworu smiled. Well, let's just say I have noble blood. Would you like to be a princess too? He asked gently. The little girl made a show of thinking hard about it. Not really. She looked up. You're so pretty, she added, grinning wide. Kaji made a ugh sound. Thank you. Kaworu reached into the folds of his sleeve and brought out a small tiara. Please accept this, even if you don't want to be a princess. I sense a unique future ahead of you, little miss, and it's only fair you have something to show just how unique you are. The little girl hesitated. She knew enough not to accept gifts from strangers, but the pretty princess didn't look like a bad person. She reached for the tiara of plastic imitation gems and compared her own slightly tanned young flesh with the pale ceramic perfection of the hybrid's hand. For the first time, she felt inadequate. She grabbed the tiara quickly. Kaworu slowly motioned over her own head on how to put it on. The little girl copied the act. "Very good," said the hybrid. "Now, is there someone you want to show off your prize to?"
"Oh yeah, Daddy! Miss Tiger!"
The little girl scampered off, only remembering to bow in thanks just halfway across the road. Kaworu raved goodbye as she left, a serene smile on his face. "What are you playing at?" Kaji asked through his teeth. "The great game, of course," the hybrid sniffed. "If you do not bring Miss Suyu to me, people will start dying. That little girl will die first, then her father, then whoever is around them." Kaworu replied, in much the same gentle tone as they used on the child. "Or if it's too abstract for you, I suppose one of these people passing by will have to do, if you want to watch." Kaji didn't know how he managed to keep himself from tackling and beating to death the seal emissary. "You're a monster, Nagisa, no matter what you look like," he spat. "Oh, of course. Now will you go and fetch Miss Suyu? Try not to drop hints as to what this is about. The lives of all these people depend on how pleased I am with how we greet each other. We will not be monitored, Mr. Ryuji. I'll know." He bowed at Kaji slightly. "I repeat, I promise I will not harm or tamper with Miss Suyu." Kaji said nothing, but his glare promised all. Kaworu smiled again, tilting his head aside. "Oh, you're trying to decide if you can kill me fast enough to stop whatever I'm planning. I'm not that easy to kill." His smile widened. "At worst, well, her name was Haruko." He swept a hand down to indicate his kimono. "You will never be able to get away with my murder." Kaji's eyes widened enough that it felt like his eyes were drying out. He felt bile rise up to his throat. Nagisa was an operative of Seal. Seal never bluffed. Kaworu inspected his perfectly manicured fingernails. "Oh, you're still here. This is the great game, Mr. Ryuji. I've no time for penny ante players. Go." Kaji let out a short garbled scream and stomped off. The spy uncaringly shoved people out of the way, and those who might have protested quieted at the look of murderous ferocity on his face. They pitied whoever he was hunting. A few made careful phone calls to the police. Asuka, meanwhile, was with Rei and Hikari. The two had already figured out Asuka was happiest when she had something to complain about. A perfect world, a perfect moment, these were impossible to her view of the universe. It was inherently unfair, and everything was relative. Some minor annoyance to mar the routine was to her a sign that all was working as it should. At that point, wooden sandals.
"How can anyone move these things?"
She asked out loud.
"Like mini stilts. Reducing contact friction from the ground doesn't really make it any easier."
"Slowly and calmly, Pilot Soryu," Rei replied.
"You're not supposed to try to run in a kimono,"
Hikari added.
"I think it helps build patience and grace." "Well, I think it's a tool for social control, another reminder of how steadily a male-dominated culture minimized women's range of motion, until finally it's a virtue to suffer in silence."
Rei and Hikari shared a long-suffering look. Asuka dipped now and then into a feminist crusade. In a world that already more or less had been forced to consider the worth of a human being, that divisions such as race, creed, or even gender paled beside the threat of ultimate extinction. Mostly, being independently minded females themselves, they didn't need to be lectured so.
"Kaji!"
Asuka squealed and leapt. Both girls of her just sighed. How quickly Asuka changed mental gears. "Asuka, come with me. There's someone you need to talk to." She skipped along as he turned. Though Kaji could see she'd mellowed out some. At some instances she could still be ever so much the land shark.
"Who?"
she asked while trying to pull him down to her weight.
"Can't whoever it is wait?"
"No, Nagisa won't wait," he spat. The name had no meaning for Hikari. Rei frowned slightly. Asuka perked up visibly.
"Kaworu-kun's here!"
She cheered. Belatedly, she recognised just how worried Kaji was. frowning so much it took away some of his handsome looks, reminding her of just how much older than her he was.
What's this about? Does it have to do with nerve?
Kaji frowned some more. Well, it peripherally involves nerve. It's complicated. He waved the issue aside. It's not important. Just come on. We don't have time to race. Sir, this seems unwise. May I? Ray started to ask. No. Kaji cut off any request to accompany Asuka. Damn it. I have to guarantee their privacy.
He's scared,
Asuka realised. It wasn't appealing.
Why? What's going on?
Kaji merely grabbed her hand and pulled her away. For so long she dreamed about something like what was happening. But despite leading her away, their fingers clasped together. His focus all but annoyed her.
Kaji-senpai! Wait! Ow!
They were starting to attract attention. Kaji stopped and sighed. He turned around and put his hands on Asuka's shoulders. He was shaking slightly. Asuka, he said softly. Don't trust Nagisa. Like me, he's a tool of secretive powers. You don't know what he's capable of. He's listening in, Mr. Ryuji. How? That's not important. I'm at a time limit here, Mr. Ryuji, and whether you believe me or not, my intentions are to save as many human lives as possible. The greater good for the greater number, or so it goes. I have no time to waste on arguing the point. You must do as I ask. The lives of these few people here is nothing compared to the greater masses at risk.
Kaji?
The spy shook his head. Never mind. He put his hands inside his pockets and walked off, slouching. Asuka followed hesitantly. Nerve Section 2 had begun to tear out a section of the park. She was led to a side street, and from there on had to go alone. Kaji had nothing further to say, but his look was so sad. She didn't understand, but it all merely added to her curiosity. She saw a girl in a white kimono stand up to meet her. Asuka looked left, then right. There was no one else around.
Where is Kaworu Nagisa?
The red-haired pilot asked, straight to the point. The smile was the same, the tilt of the head was the same, the voice was the same. I'm afraid I have a confession to make.
You got a sex change?
Asuka shrieked.
No wonder you got sick so easily. That explains your bouts of effeminacy too.
Her voice trailed off. Kaworu stumbled, and only barely kept himself from falling flat on his face. It's a disguise, I'm a guy! He blinked, and put down his fist from the stereotypical indignant pose. He coughed into it. How quickly she could make him lose control. I mean, it's good to see you again, Soyu-san. Please, rest your feet. He bowed and gestured towards the bench. Asuka winced at how elegantly feminine that motion was, more grace than even she could practice.
What did you do to Kaji?
She asked. Well, Mr. Ryuji and I work for the same organisation. You could say I'm his direct superior in many things. Asuka narrowed her gaze.
So, the first time we met you already knew who I was. You lied to me.
Only a small one. You would only have shut yourself in even more if you thought I held you under some preformed expectations. Truly, the only thing I knew was your name and description. All I saw was a beautiful girl running out into the dark street. That was dangerous. I didn't really know who you were until I was close enough for talking.
You've been manipulating me this whole time.
Kaworu looked mournful. I've been protecting you. Have I ever steered you into anything I wanted? The greater good serves you well, I see. But that's just philosophy. Asuka touched her own lips and looked angry. My feelings for you are real, Miss Soyu, Kaworu added. Sometimes it's only the thought of you that keeps me going some days. Not all of us fight angels in the same direct manner as you, and a veneer of normalcy is sustained by those of us who work in the shadows. He sighed. Or do you think love cannot bloom on the battlefield? Asuka lifted her left eyebrow.
What the hell are you talking about?
Kaworu leaned close and gave her a deep, intense stare. Asuka, he whispered. She flinched. Why did he have to be so damn pretty? I can sense a wellspring of power within you. Please, extend it and tell me what you see. She frowned and closed her eyes.
It's not fair,
She shouted into her skull.
a guy has no right to be prettier than I am. Those are the lips I kissed. It's not fair that... I don't swing that way, damn it!
She let her anger pulse out. She gasped and scooted back.
You're one of them!
Not precisely. I am Kaworu Nagisa, technically the 0th child. I was created as a human weapon, formed out of angel and human cells, before there was even the Evangelion. Your companion, Rei Ayanami, was born using techniques perfected upon my flesh. The scars may have faded, but the emotional pain was real. The loneliness, that was genuine. Asuka couldn't have missed it. The voice was precisely pitched to evoke a feeling of enduring resignation. And a great virtue upon the Japanese was to endure. His womanly looks only intensified that calm, resolute acceptance. If she can accept that Ayanami was not a freak, then this boy that she'd started to love. He must have been so desperate for affection from someone who could treat him as an equal. And who else would there be?
Ayanami, who... Okay, that was a creepy image. Baka Shinji's just too crazy to be relied on. So, me.
Asuka nodded.
It must have taken some courage to speak up that night.
He was obviously telling the truth, not merely from the truth sense she was applying as one of the few applications of a human AT field that didn't harm the user, but that he felt like Rei. He was half angel. The rest follows.
What happened to you?
Asuka asked. That's not important right now. He took her hands in his. There's something I need to tell you. Asuka blushed.
Kaworu-kun, this might not be a good time.
In her mind she screamed,
No way in hell am I going to be proposed to by a guy more beautiful than I am. This should be done properly, if at all.
Someday you will need to kill me. Don't hesitate. If you ever had any sliver of any respect for me, you will not let me go on living such a worthless existence.
What? Fuck, I can't even call him emo if he's wearing white.
Listen to me. As much as Miss Ayanami is more human than angel, I am more angel than human. So far, I've been able to resist. But someday, eventually, the angels will be able to break through my will towards the genetic imperative. When the time comes, you must end it.
I don't understand.
It can't be reverse psychology, it's too simple.
Look at those eyes. He really would be happy if I was the one to deal the fatal blow.
Unconsciously, she formed an oath to ensure he lived. I believe it is time you were told the truth. The complete, unvarnished truth. I believe it is time that you heard of Seal. And so he told her about Adam, about Second Impact, and of how that great source was held captive deep in the bowels of the Geofront. He told her of how the explosive power of its awakening was what destroyed the balance of this Earth. That much she may have known, but if it had slept for millions of years, why should it wake so suddenly? Seal sought to steal the power of a true star god for itself. The angels are to Adam as an ant was to a main battle tank. The purpose of Adam was to seed life into the galaxy, shaping worlds to its form. For some reason it was stopped and laid low, allowing humanity to grow. Its power was incalculable. Adam awoke, but its power broke free in a torrent, scattering protoform angels all over the world and into space. And what remained was taken by nerve to create the Evangelions. So you see, it's all entirely our fault. And whether he meant that as a human or an angel, his unique circumstances ensured he could speak nothing but the absolute truth.
So you're saying we're fighting? That so many have died? So a bunch of old men could ascend humanity? Because they're getting old and their bones are starting to hurt, they say that life has too much pain to be lived?
Asuka boiled over with anger.
What? I can't believe this!
But she had to. It felt right. The angels want to destroy humanity, that's clear enough. I will not contradict what Gendo Akari has said. This is because of an instinctive response to limited resources. And of course, they want to possess Adam. It can also uplift their evolution. In fact, it's designed to. The world will be wiped clean and prepared for their form of life to reign supreme.
But it didn't have to happen, right? We could have just left it alone. And nerve here. All those lies. We're deliberately attracting these things. We can finally kill all of them and bury the sin. Damn it. It's not right. Are you nothing more important in a game?
The great game, Kaworu said, nodding. And thus why the greater good must prevail. There's too much idiocy when power is left to run rampant among the unknowing or left to rot within a deluded powermonger.
Kaworu.
He thought in terms massive and majestic. Like Shinji. Why was she so attracted to brooding boys anyway? Asuka smirked a bit. Ambitious, but so what? She was Langley Sawyer the Great. It was a time for great thoughts and great deeds.
What should I do?
Fight, Asuka-san. Fight as you have always fought. Ever since I was allowed out on my own, my best use has always been infiltration. I'm a traitor to both halves of my being. Please, if we meet in combat...
This isn't fair! I'm not going to let this happen!
Asuka, when that time comes, I won't hesitate to kill you. It will be too late by then. Give me that at least. By the love I have for you, don't put me ahead of the greater good. Asuka gasped. As much as she dreamed about the moment, the sincerity felt like a knife straight to her heart. A pity that Kaworu all but shouted that one could still destroy in love. Then Asuka felt lips upon hers, and warmth filling her body. Desire played music upon her skin. She swooned into that embrace. A Section 2 operative whistled, peering through his binoculars. Well, damn, I didn't know Soryu swang that way. He was tall and fit, and had the nondescript features expected from those in the service. Got anything on the directional mark? His partner shook his head. His face was likewise regular, but was more distinctive for a shaved head. There's no reason it should be malfunctioning. I'm getting clear signals everywhere else, he sighed. Maybe you can figure this out. My turn. The binoculars were handed over. Whoa, Soyu's growing nicely, but she's not really to my taste. You're right, though. That other girl, that's hot. He giggled shamelessly. I'm gonna sleep well tonight. There was the distinctive noise of snapping plastic. Damn it, Sano, that's going to come out of... a paycheck. He looked up and thought, damn, she's cute too. The girl was clad in a tight, sheer black suit similar to a plug suit. Her body was slim and lithe, and his gaze followed down her fine legs to her dainty feet. Feet that rested upon the slumped figure of his partner. The other agent's neck was bent at an odd angle. What a waste of space, he heard someone say from behind. He felt hands grip the side of his head and turn it all the way around. He had a short, final glimpse of another teen, a boy, with curly blonde hair and a wide, merciless grin. Martin Bettelheim laughed as he let go of the corpse. He felt so light, so powerful. His muscles buzzed with anticipation, and seemed as if he could run for miles and miles without growing weary. It was like he could jump straight up into the sky. He clenched and opened his fist, discerning faint new veins behind the skin of his wrists. Normal is just another word for unremarkable, he said giddily. Why should the teeming weak dictate terms to the strong? Why should the antelope think the lion shall show mercy? He turned and stalked out of the bush. He grinned fiercely as he saw the entangled bodies at the bench. Nagisa! He shouted hoarsely. Fun time is over! Kaworu let go. They found me, he whispered. I'm sorry, Miss Soryu. Asuka shook herself out of her daze. What? Martin kept grinning, his face open and fulgent. Did you really think you could run away, Nagisa? You belong with us, he leered. So this is Soryu. I expected your tie to look better, but whatever floats your boat.
Who the
Asuka heaved out in pain as she was slammed against the bench, a hand at her throat.
So fast!
she thought.
Did he jump the distance? That's not humanly possible!
So, Martin hissed. Pathetic. I thought you'd put up a little more challenge than this. I should kill you right now. Save you the humiliation of proving just how much hotter you really are. His grin widened, his gums showing in the demented half-snow. His fingers started to dig into her flesh. Stop! Kaworu shouted. Let her go. I'll help you. Don't harm her. That was our agreement. Martin's rage was fueled only by the complete lack of fear in her eyes, despite holding her life in his hands. Bitch, I'm going to break you. He pulled her up slightly, then slammed her again onto the bench. The wooden backrest cracked. The trident warborn pilot let go and stepped back, spitting at her. The spittle spattered upon her kimono sleeves. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Kaworu's voice sounded so far away. I didn't mean for this to happen. I can't... No choice. I have to obey. Asuka looked up, her eyes blazing.
Right!
She snarled. Understood. Martin Bettelheim toppled from the impact of a double kick to the face. Wooden sandals may present less surface area for grip to the ground, but at the same time focus kinetic force to a smaller contact point, to greater pain sometimes. He tipped, fell, flipped over, and came to a dusty stop face down on the pavement. He looked up and snarled. His crushed bones popped back to place. You are something different, Ray said softly, her eyes narrowing in suspicion. She flicked her gaze towards Sarah Campbell, about to jump into the fray, and a momentary glare froze the other girl on her feet. Then she saw Kaworu. You. Die. She tapped her left foot twice and flowed into a spin kick, her kimono whipping open.
Ray! No!
Asuka shouted. Kaworu made no effort to dodge, merely smiled. Martin jumped at the same time to attack her back. Ray continued to spin, veering away from Kaworu to complete a circle, and catching the blonde-haired pilot again on the side of his head. He flew and smacked into a tree. The tree fell over. Then Sarah was there, attacking with knife-like thrusts of her hands. Ray ducked and reaved, backing away. She skipped aside, and Sarah's fingers tore apart a metal lamppost. Just as emotionless, Ray bashed down with her balled fists and slammed her to the ground. The metal frame of the bench bent out of shape under her torso. Ray slid to a stop beside Asuka. Are you in pain, Pilot Tsuyu?
I'm alright.
Asuka got back up, wiping at her lips.
Kaworu, you...
Martin punched out, toppling the tree in his anger. Nagisa! Stop standing around! Do something useful! Get rid of this bitch! A glazed look briefly passed over the hybrid's eyes. He blinked. I'm really so very sorry, Asuka-san, he said softly, shrugging. I don't want to do this, but I have no choice.
No, Kaworu-kun, fight it! You can beat whatever compulsion they...
She blinked and he was gone. Ray let out a "Gugh!" and he was there. Kaworu stepped back, staring at his blood-stained hand in obvious horror. I'm sorry, he said again. Hinana, that we should meet like this, after so long. Ray's red eyes flared briefly. Die again, contemptible flesh thing! She snarled, her voice taking an odd timbre. She fell back onto Asuka's arms.
Ayanami!
Kaworu kept a mournful expression, but his mind noted her injury. His fingers slid into the space between her 7th and 8th vertebra, just missing the heart and going into the left lung. Lots of blood, a disabling strike but hardly fatal. Now do you finally understand? He said to Asuka. His hand was shaking, the same as his voice. She is lucky. She can still be free while she lives. Martin scoffed and approached. Shut your running. You're a tool. Haven't you already accepted that? Get us out of there, Nagisa. Sarah quickly stepped to place beside him. The hybrid looked down at the blood trailing down his right hand. Remember, blood is the key, he said out loud to no one in particular. He went over and traced a vertical line down Martin's forehead. He did the same to Sarah. He turned to Asuka and gave her one last pleading look. Blood is always the key. He drew a line down his forehead and they vanished. The air crackled at the space they used to occupy, but that subsided. Ray coughed up blood and began to shake. Get a hold of yourself, Ayanami! Asuka shouted, panicky. She found herself screaming for help. Her voice was lost inside another shriek. Thunder clashed and lightning flashed upon a clear sky. With a powerful whoomp and a lingering high pitch, Iruel returned. Darkness descended upon Tokyo 3. Asuka looked up, and like the others outside, felt their hearts clench in mindless fear. 6 kilometers in diameter was a figure that seemed manageable on paper. A person could walk that in good time. It utterly failed to describe just how heart-stoppingly massive the angel had become. For comparison's sake, it was the usable portion of the geofront. The distance between the geofront and the surface was 0.9 kilometers. The actual city centre of Tokyo 3 and the length of its main avenue was a mere 1.5 kilometers. The tallest building was 400 meters. The black sphere loomed over the city, filling the sky. Its shadow brought a bleak, starless night. Iruel could swallow Tokyo 3 and still leave room for plenty more. Some of the civilians began screaming hysterically, driven close to madness by the sudden realization of the menace manifest before them. A man, all human meaning. What was that against such otherworldly might? What was an Ava? The proudest constructs of man were as toys against such terror. The streetlights switched on. The alarms, already too late, began to sound.